Education 701 presentation through Morningside University. Introduction. My name is Kelsey Assmann. I've been a first grade teacher at Woodbine Elementary for about 6 years. My project was titled The Impact of Developing Social Emotional Skills Through Positive Action Curriculum in Elementary Students. The statement of my problem was elementary students have a lack of social emotional learning skills, and this problem has only continued to worsen throughout the years that I've been teaching. Especially in the recent years with the COVID-19 pandemic, students have not developed or gained social emotional learning skills. There is an extreme need for curriculums to develop and enhance these social emotional skills and a resource for teachers to follow in order to teach these skills. I wanted to test our social emotional learning curriculum, Positive Action, that we are piloting this year to see if it developed and strengthened the social emotional learning skills. And then I wanted to see what effect that had on our academic performance of our students. My hope was that as social emotional skills developed and strengthened, their academic performance and achievement would also increase positively. The literature I reviewed only strengthened the reason of why this research study was needed. Peyton, 2008, found that there was an impact of social emotional learning programs on elementary students, that these social emotional learning programs increased their social emotional learning skills, showed a positive impact on their self behaviors and attitudes towards others, that there were fewer conduct problems in the classroom and school, and that there was lower emotional distress. NG and Bull of 2018 found that social emotional learning skills should be taught through day-to-day interactions as well as through explicit instruction. I found this very important. It should not just be a set time of the day. You should carry that instruction throughout your day-to-day interactions with students. They also found it very important to provide meaningful professional development for teachers so that they could accurately implement your curriculum through instruction as well as those day-to-day interactions. Durlack of 2011 found that there were 3 separate strategies that they used in a meta-analysis conducted by the teaching staff. So a program was implemented through the class by the teacher, a program was implemented through the class by non-school personnel, and a program was implemented through a multi-component program. Also, they found that there was a positive impact on skills, attitudes, behaviors, and academic performance. That is what I wanted to test in my research. My purpose statement was to determine if positive action can develop and strengthen students' social emotional learning skills, my hope was that this would result in fewer classroom disruptions, and then that would in turn increase their academic performance and achievement. My thought process was that if there were fewer behavior disruptions that the teacher was having to deal with, that initially takes away from the academic instruction time, that this would increase that time for academic instruction, which would result in higher academic performance and achievement. These students are less distracted by the problem behavior, and the student creating the problem behavior is spending less time creating it and instead focused on the academic instruction at hand. The methods were focused on my participants, which were 17 first grade students. These students ranged from 6 to 8 years old and were 100% Caucasian. I had 5 female students and 12 male students. 24% of my students were low SES, meaning they received free or reduced lunch. I had 0 students on IEPs or receiving individualized instruction. The materials that I would need were my positive action curriculum, the MySaber screener through FastBridge Learning, Class Dojo, which is how I track behaviors in my classroom, and classroom test scores to see if there would be a positive correlation. The procedures I would be using was a qualitative study, and then I would be using the data collection through my observations and screeners. I would use my classroom observations to track any behavior disruptions, and then I would also track that through that Class Dojo behavior app. I would also use the MySaber screener to get a baseline and then a post-test score. The variables that I would be having were my positive action curriculum, which would be the independent variable, and then the dependent variables would be my students and the scores on the assessments and screeners. To start my experimental plan, I would start by giving each student the MySaber screener on FastBridge Learning. This would ask them a series of questions that they would answer, and each question would be focused on one part of the social emotional learning foundation. The teacher would also take this assessment and it would track how the teacher sees the students and how they are developed in their social emotional learning skills. I could then view the individual skills report to see how my students scored and how I scored them. Each student would then be enrolled in positive action curriculum for 4 weeks. I would use the MySaber screener score to see which students were flagged as high risk, and those students would be pulled out for small group or individualized time with the guidance counselor to get that extra help that they needed. Then at the end of that 4 week plan, my students would then take the MySaber screener again, and we would check for any social emotional growth. I would also take that screener again to see if I felt like my students had developed their social emotional skills. The hope was that these skills would improve, their social emotional skills would improve, and then that would create an improvement on their academic performance and achievement. In the results section of my research, I found that the post-test scores were 17% higher than the pre-test scores. The pre-test mean was 39.412 and the post-test mean was 46.294. I also found that my standard deviation did not deviate greatly between the two tests, which means that this was a pretty valid way to test these students. I think that a 17% higher in 4 weeks shows that this program has great potential for a whole year and even years of implementation. The past research and theory that I connected this research study to were the theory of the social development theory through Lee Vygotsky. This theory is a belief that social emotional learning is required for cognitive development. In order to be able to academically succeed in the classroom, these students have to have a developed social emotional learning skill set. This is the key component of constructivism, and that the achievements improve through social interaction and day-to-day interaction, providing time for students to collaborate with each other and day-to-day social interactions, which NG and Bowl said in 2018 would be extremely important. Not only setting aside 30 minutes every 2 weeks for this positive action curriculum to be taught explicitly, but carrying that instruction through those day-to-day interactions. The research is also linked to the benefits that Peyton in 2008 found. Students would have better decision-making skills, better emotional management, problem-solving ability, goal achievements, maintaining positive relations, and better academic performance and student engagement throughout your academic instruction. This research only reinforced the importance of social emotional skills being provided through explicit instruction, which all of these researchers had found and been saying. The implications of this study were that there would be evidence provided to the parents, students, staff, and administrators. This is hard evidence that the students, parents, staff, and administrators can look at and evaluate and see that this program is benefiting their students' academic performance as well as their social emotional skills. This would also impact the staff by providing a tool for them to use day to day. giving them language, skill sets, vocabulary to use with these students in order to help them kind of talk them down if they're having a behavior or work them through that behavior they were showing. This also benefits the students because they are developing these social emotional learning skills at an early age, and this creates a long-lasting impact on their functionality in the classroom as well as in the real world. The limitations to this study were my sample size. The sample size was extremely small, and the demographics of my sample size was 100% Caucasian, meaning that there wasn't a diverse population that I could test on, and I think that is an extreme limitation to this study. Another limitation would be that my teacher background and training impacts the validity of this research. Because I have taught in this school for 6 years, that could affect the validity of this research. Recommendations for the future would be a longer research period. 4 weeks was not enough to see um, what could happen potentially with this program throughout an entire year. Continued research to strengthen the validity. Continued research to see the improvements on academic performance and achievement. Like I said, 4 weeks was not long enough to see if this would be continued success in their academic performance as well as having a larger and more diverse sample size. Lastly, listed are the references below. So these are the researchers that I found to have the most impact on the research I was having. I have Durlach of 2011, Joins and Buford of 2012, McNone of 2015, NG and Bull of 2008, and Payton of 2000, NG and Bull of 2018, and Payton of 2008. The last reference I found to be extremely beneficial throughout these courses that I've taken, and I would strongly recommend reading that book. Overall, I think that the research that I have found definitely shows that there is a positive impact in this curriculum, and that starting this in August, right when they get into school, could substantially impact their social emotional learning skills and hopefully positively impact their academic performance as well.